You know what nobody warns you about childhood memories? They have a physical address. And somebody can demolish that address, bulldoze it, let the jungle eat it, or turn it into a pharmaceutical warehouse. And there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. Australia has a habit of building spectacular vacation destinations. Island resorts, theme parks, luxury hotels with the largest pools in the Southern Hemisphere. We pour hundreds of millions of dollars into them. Millions of families visit. Millions of children form their earliest memories of holidays, and possibly their best memories ever that hits like nostalgia. Roller coasters, swimming pools, and dolphins. And then we abandon them. Completely. A 60 Minutes investigation found that of 30 resorts on and off the Queensland coast, half are currently closed. Not struggling. Closed. Some have been rotting for nearly 2 decades. The largest theme park in the Southern Hemisphere is now an industrial estate. The largest pool in the Southern Hemisphere sits drained and crumbling. A Greg Norman golf course is so overgrown you would not know it was a golf course. I went deep on this. Government records, court filings, drone footage, news archives, forum posts from former visitors and employees. What I found was 13 places that millions of Australians once loved, and what happened to them is genuinely unsettling. At number 13, Leyland Brothers World, North Arm Cove, New South Wales, 3 hours north of Sydney. If you are over 40, you know Mike and Mal Leyland. They were the TV adventurers who explored every corner of outback Australia on Ask the Leylands. In 1990, they opened a theme park. The centerpiece was a 1:40 scale replica of Uluru, housing an outback town with food outlets. Next to it, a 1:40 replica of Sydney Harbour Bridge so you could compare their sizes. A sugarcane train took you around the circuit. It was their love letter to the country they had spent their lives filming. It went bankrupt in 2 years. The brothers had invested their life savings, mortgaged everything. And the financial collapse did not just destroy their finances. It destroyed their relationship. Mike and Mal Leyland, inseparable adventure companions for decades, stopped speaking to each other. The silence lasted years. Mike died in 2024. The site now operates as the Great Aussie Bush Camp, an outdoor education facility. The replica Uluru reportedly still exists in some form. A monument to two brothers' love of Australia became the physical symbol of everything they lost. Number 12. Magic Mountain, Glenelg, Adelaide. 4 massive water slides built into an artificial mountain on Adelaide's best beach foreshore. Opened 1982. Claimed the largest waterslide setup in the Southern Hemisphere. For 22 years, it was the defining image of summer for every South Australian kid. Then it was demolished. Completely. No plaque, no marker, nothing. The beach house replaced it nearby. If you are under 30 in Adelaide, you have no idea Magic Mountain ever existed. 22 years of childhood summers erased from the physical landscape. And wait until you see what happened to number 2. That one is worse. Number 11. Atlantis Marine Park, 2 Rocks, 60 kilometers north of Perth. Opened Boxing Day, 1981. This was Alan Bond's baby, part of his Yanchep Sun City plan, backed by the Japanese Tokyu Corporation. The slogan was genuinely, "For the enrichment of mankind." Over 13,500 people came in the first few days. The park had performing dolphins, seal shows, water slides, a sea serpent roller coaster, an aquarium, and over 45 limestone sculptures by American artist Mark Labuse, including a 10-meter King Neptune overlooking everything. 7 wild bottlenose dolphins had been captured and trained as the star performers. Perth's expected tourism boom never arrived. The park bled money for a decade. New animal welfare regulations meant building significantly larger dolphin enclosures. Atlantis closed in August 1990. Then came the part nobody expected. The 9 dolphins, 6 wild-born, 3 born in captivity, were released back into the ocean in January 1992. Some could not cope. 3 were recaptured and relocated to an aquarium. The remaining dolphins disappeared. None were ever positively identified again. Though local fishermen occasionally reported encountering unusually friendly dolphins in the area. As of 2026, much of the site has been cleared for redevelopment, but the 10-meter King Neptune statue still stands. Heritage listed, restored by volunteers in 2015. His cheery limestone face still watches over the ruins of Alan Bond's dream. Bond, of course, went on to be convicted of Australia's largest corporate fraud. The park that promised the enrichment of mankind delivered bankruptcy, lost dolphins, and a statue nobody can bring themselves to knock down. Number 10. Old Sydney Town, Summersby, Central Coast, 1 hour north of Sydney. Opened Australia Day 1975 by Prime Minister Gough Whitlam. This was Australia's first open-air museum, a faithful recreation of Sydney between 1788 and 1810, with historically accurate colonial buildings, live reenactments, soldiers on parade, thundering cannons, convict punishments, including public floggings, pistol duels, magistrates' court, and bullock rides. Robert Hughes, the author of The Fatal Shore, called it the only theme park in the world devoted to punishment and repression. Over its lifetime, 6 million people visited. A school excursion to Old Sydney Town was a rite of passage for NSW primary schoolers. It lost $600,000 a year from almost the beginning. Whitlam promised $3.5 million in government support. The Fraser government withdrew it. By the time it closed in 2003, the Redcoat platoons had been reduced from full units to 4 officers. Marketing was described as virtually non-existent. Maintenance was described as purely cosmetic surgery. A 2014 fire destroyed the entrance building and irreplaceable artifacts. But here is the strange thing. Many of the 30-plus colonial buildings still stand on the 25-hectare site, reportedly in decent condition as of 2024. A recreation of colonial punishment, purpose-built to entertain families, now itself abandoned and decaying in the bush. Hughes' description has become prophecy. Number 9. South Moller Island, Whitsunday Islands, Queensland. This resort was first established in 1937, 80 years of continuous holiday service. Beachfront units, a backpackers section, 16 kilometres of walking and cycling tracks across a hilly island with dozens of beautiful bays. Classic Australian family island holiday. Then, Cyclone Debbie tore through the Whitsundays in March 2017 and devastated the resort in a single night. The damage made refurbishment too expensive. The resort has been completely abandoned since, owned by China Capital Investment Group, who also own nearby Daydream Island. Daydream was also damaged by Debbie. Daydream was rebuilt. South Moller was not. Same cyclone, same island group, opposite fates. A 60 Minutes investigation featured South Moller. A local yacht skipper described the remnants as resembling a crack house. Destroyed hotel rooms covered in splintered wood and broken glass. As of 2025, the old rooms and infrastructure are still there, slowly being reclaimed by nature. You can camp on the island with a permit and wander through the eerie old resort buildings entirely alone. The walking trails and beaches remain beautiful. The resort buildings sit decaying on an otherwise pristine tropical island, and nobody is coming to fix them. If you've made it this far, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel and sharing this video with your friends and families. It's completely free, and we bring new videos about our country. Number 8. Brampton Island, Southern Whitsundays, 18 nautical miles from Mackay. A resort island since the early 1930s, taken over by Trans-Australia Airlines in 1985. Daily buffet-themed nights, snorkeling, fish feeding, bushwalks, games with other guests in the evenings, sparkling blue waters, a classic Australian family island holiday, closed since 2006, 20 years abandoned, battered by Cyclone Yasi and then Cyclone Debbie after it was already empty. A February 2026 Yachting Monthly article described visiting as a very eerie, slightly apocalyptic feeling. Dilapidated pier, old rickety rail lines that once trolleyed tourists up to the resort, an abandoned bar, TVs and jet skis reportedly just left behind as if everybody walked out one day and never came back. One couple found their old Brampton Island coffee mug in a kitchen cupboard in 2024. Searched online, discovered the resort was gone. Currently under lease to United Petroleum. Yes, a petrol company. Plans for new buildings, a golf course, a tennis court, and a beach bar have not materialized. And the island holds a dark secret most Australians have never heard. In the early 1980s, a female staff member was murdered at a secret staff-only beach after disclosing the beach's location to a day tripper. Former workers called it Staff Beach. They never told guests it existed. A former employee who worked there from 1978 to 1980 shared the story publicly for the first time decades later. The island that held family holiday memories also holds a murder. Number 7, Lindeman Island, Club Med. Southern Whitsundays, 40 minutes from Airlie Beach. Here is a fact that should stop you in your tracks. Club Med Lindeman Island, opened in 1992, was the newest and last significant resort ever built on a Queensland island. Ever. The most recent attempt at a major island resort in the entire Queensland system was 1992, and it is now abandoned. Lindeman Island has been hosting visitors since the 1920s when the Nicholson family built 8 grass cabins. But Club Med was the big chapter, Australia's first and only Club Med. A tropical playground for families and international holidaymakers throughout the 1990s and 2000s. Cyclone Yasi damaged the resort in 2011. Club Med closed permanently in 2012. A Chinese company called White Horse purchased it for $12 million with a $583 million master plan. After 10 years of ownership and zero construction, not a single wall built. White Horse put it back on the market in 2022, wanting $20 million. The newest Queensland island resort ever built spent more years abandoned than it spent operating. 20 years open, 14 years decaying. But here is why Lindeman is at number 7 and not higher. Because this is the comeback story. In 2023, Singapore-based WellSmart Group acquired the island. In late 2025, Asia Pacific hotel management company La Vie Hotels secured the management rights. A $40 to $50 million Phase 1 redevelopment is underway. 200-room 5-star resort, 9 suites, multiple restaurants, spa, gym, solar farm. Phase 1 completion is expected in 2026. An international luxury brand announcement is coming. After 12 plus years of abandonment, Lindeman is the only major Queensland island resort that appears to be genuinely coming back from the dead. And honestly, that makes every other entry on this list feel worse. Because Lindeman proves it is possible. It is just that nobody else has done it. Of the 30 resorts on and off the Queensland coast, 60 Minutes found that half are closed. Only 3 island resorts have been successfully revived: Hamilton, Hayman, and Daydream. Lindeman might become the 4th. The rest are ruins, and the pattern is always the same. Financial struggle. Cyclone delivers the fatal blow. Abandoned. Purchased by a foreign investor with a grand plan. Nothing happens. Sold again. Repeat. It is a cycle so predictable you could set your watch by it. The only variable is how many years pass between each empty promise. And yet every new buyer seems to believe they will be the one to break the pattern. White Horse believed it. They owned Lindeman for 10 years without laying a single brick. Maybe Wellsmart will be different. Maybe the $583 million master plan will actually happen this time. But forgive Queenslanders if they are not holding their breath. If you are finding this interesting, hit subscribe. I have spent a genuinely unreasonable amount of time researching this. Number 3 will break your heart. Number 6, El Caballo Blanco, Catherine Field, southwest Sydney, and Wooroloo, Perth. You know what a lot of Australians over 40 cannot get out of their heads? A jingle. A specific jingle. El Caballo Blanco, the white horse. Perth businessman Ray Williams imported Andalusian stallions from Spain in 1972 and built 2 theme parks centered on spectacular Spanish dancing horse shows, modeled on Vienna's Spanish riding school, but far more flamboyant. Riders and horses decked out in ruffles, plumes, and sequins. The Catherine Field Park near Sydney opened in 1979 with an 800-seat indoor arena, water slides, train rides, go-karts, a wildlife zoo, a carriage museum, and a restaurant. The dancing horses were the centerpiece, and it was so successful that Williams opened an El Caballo Blanco show at Disneyland. An Australian theme park about Spanish dancing horses got a show at Disneyland. Then Ray Williams died in the US. Operations wound down. The Catherine Field Park held its last horse show in 1998 and closed by 1999. What followed is one of the strangest sequences of events in Australian theme park history. The abandoned complex was used for carpet storage. Literal carpet storage. An 800-seat arena that once hosted dancing Andalusian stallions in sequence became a warehouse for rolled-up floor coverings. Then, during the late 1990s and early 2000s, the site became a venue for illegal bush raves. Then, in 2003, fire destroyed the main arena and stables. 25 Andalusian horses still living on the property had to be relocated. The horse trainer Sharon Sparks was described as heartbroken. She had cared for those horses through the park's decline, through the neglect, through the raves. The horses were the last living connection to what the place had been. In 2015, demolition began. Sekisui House's The Hermitage Gledswood Hills residential development swallowed the site. By 2016, there was nothing left. A Channel 9 news crew visited as the bulldozers moved in, capturing archival footage of what used to be alongside the construction fences going up. Families now live in houses built on the exact ground where Andalusian stallions once danced for cheering crowds in an 800-seat arena. None of the new residents know what was there before them. The Wooroloo complex near Perth briefly revived horse shows in the mid-2000s, but also ceased operations. The dancing white horses of El Caballo Blanco exist now only in archived footage at the National Film and Sound Archive, and a jingle that people over 40 genuinely cannot get out of their heads. A theme park, carpet storage, bush raves, fire, housing estate. That is the life cycle of an Australian dream. Number 5, Laguna Keys Resort, between Airlie Beach and Mackay, gateway to the Whitsundays. This is the one that makes you wonder whether anyone in the 1990s had heard of a feasibility study. A 28-year-old Japanese businessman named Shinichi Sawada had a vision. A $250 million luxury 5-star resort with a 70-berth marina, an 18-hole championship golf course designed by Greg Norman, a 60-suite lodge, swimming pools, a beach club, horse stables, restaurants, a conference center, and a driving range. They even started building an international airport, got as far as a runway, without bitumen, just a dirt strip leading to nothing. Nobody paved it. Nobody ever will. The resort opened in 1992. By 1995, 3 years later, Aqua del Rey International was bankrupt. They owed approximately $200 million to Japanese and Australian banks. By 2009, $2 million in unpaid council rates had accumulated. The resort passed through multiple failed owners and is currently held by Chinese company Full Share Holdings. They have been the owners for years now. Nothing has changed. And here is where it gets eerie. 30 years later, all of it is still there. A 60-suite lodge, a beach club, a marina, a Greg Norman golf course so overgrown it is genuinely unrecognizable as a golf course. Fairways that look like scrubland, greens that are anything but green, a lagoon pool that now looks like a swamp, dark water, algae, the smell of stagnation where families once splashed on holidays. The structures are visible from the road but barricaded with no entry signs and surveillance cameras. And there are residential homes in the suburb of Laguna Keys. Current residents, people who live normal lives, raise kids, go to work, live in their houses alongside the decaying resort complex. They look out their windows at the ruins every single morning. $250 million, 3 years of operation, 30 years of decay, an unpaved airport runway pointing at nothing. This is what happens when a 28-year-old scuba diving enthusiast bets $250 million on a tropical paradise without understanding what it takes to keep one running. One blog post about the site summed it up perfectly. Classical 1990s, Queensland foreign investment gone bad. And the Greg Norman golf course, once designed to be championship standard, once a selling point worth millions in marketing, has been reclaimed so completely by the Queensland bush that if you walked across it today, you would have no idea you were standing on a fairway. Nature does not care about Greg Norman. Number 4, Dunk Island, Coonangle 4 kilometers off Mission Beach, far north Queensland. This one has everything. Celebrity guests, a Category 5 cyclone, a lavish champagne launch party on ruins, an investment firm investigated by ASIC, and a tech billionaire trying to fix it all. The resort was first established in 1936. By the 1960s, it was a destination for the wealthy and the famous. Sean Connery visited. Henry Ford II visited. Australian Prime Ministers Harold Holt and Gough Whitlam visited. At its peak, 160 rooms, a 9-hole golf course, restaurants, and a reputation as one of Australia's most treasured island escapes. Owned successively by P&O, TAA, Qantas, Mission Beach on the mainland existed largely as a stepping-off point to get to Dunk. Between 23:57 on February 2nd, 2011 and 0:27 on February 3rd, 2011, a window of 30 minutes, the eye of Category 5, Cyclone Yasi, passed directly over Dunk Island, the biggest storm in Queensland history, 650 kilometers wide, gusts up to 295 kilometers per hour. The resort was smashed to pieces. 69 staff were locked down 4 to a room during the cyclone. A local fishing charter operator later said Yasi put the resort out of its misery because it was already struggling before the storm hit. What followed was a parade of failed saviors. Peter Bond bought the island for $7.5 million in 2011. Nothing happened. Mayfair 101, an investment firm led by James Morhinney, bought it for $31.5 million in 2019 with a $1.6 billion plan. They threw a lavish launch party, 200 people flown in, helicopters, a barefoot saxophonist, Moet champagne, on an island where roofs were falling down and tree roots had destroyed the road network. Within a year, Mayfair 101 collapsed. The island was repossessed. A SIC launched winding up proceedings against Morhinney's companies. A champagne party on ruins, followed by a corporate fraud investigation. You could not write it. In 2022, Annie Cannon-Brookes, wife of Atlassian co-founder Mike Cannon-Brookes, and ranked 12th richest in Australia with a net worth of $12.18 billion, purchased the island for approximately $25 million. She opened a restaurant on the Spit in July 2025. Workers accidentally cut through a high-voltage submarine cable in June 2025. briefly knocking out power to the entire island. Camping is still the only accommodation. The old resort structures remain largely ruined. But the approach is different this time. Sustainability, wellness, no casino and marina promises, just slow, careful restoration. The island has had 5 different owners since the cyclone. Maybe the 6th time is the charm. Number 3. Great Keppel Island, Whopper, 15 kilometers off Yeppoon, Great Barrier Reef. If you grew up in Australia in the 1980s or 1990s, you know the slogan. Get wrecked on Great Keppel. It was a double entendre. It was cheeky. It was iconic. The most popular souvenir on the island was a t-shirt proclaiming, "I got wrecked on Keppel Island." The island has 17 white sand beaches and among the greatest hard coral reef cover on the entire Great Barrier Reef. The resort could accommodate 350 visitors and 130 staff. Trans-Australia Airlines built an airstrip. Major airlines flew in on Twin Otters. It was one of Australia's most beloved island holidays. Qantas sold the resort in 1998. It passed through operators including Contiki and Mercure. In 2006, Sydney developer Tower Holdings purchased the lease. They closed the resort in February 2008, weeks away from a planned refurbishment, and announced something entirely different. A $1.15 billion redevelopment, 1,700 villas, a 560-berth marina, a casino, a golf course, on a Great Barrier Reef island. The plan tore the island's close-knit community apart. Lifelong friends stopped speaking to each other. Death threats were made. Federal Environment Minister Peter Garrett rejected the plan in 2009 for what he called unacceptable impacts to the Great Barrier Reef. Tower demolished some of the old resort buildings in 2018. The Queensland government cancelled all tower leases in April 2023 for non-payment. Mining billionaire Gina Rinehart's beach club plan collapsed in 2022. The resort has now been closed for 18 years. A resident named John Watson, age 70, described watching resort staff line up for the barge to leave the island as the saddest thing you'll ever see in your life. One staff member, nicknamed Duck by his colleagues, died 12 months after being forced to leave, reportedly of a broken heart. As of 2026, the island still attracts over 50,000 visitors per year for its beaches and reefs. But only budget accommodation and camping exist. The Queensland government released a $30 million master plan in April 2024. An Arrivals Plaza started construction in February 2026. A wastewater treatment plant is being built. Basic infrastructure, but no resort. Not even a plan for one. 18 years of corporate speculation, billion-dollar promises, community destruction, and death threats. And not a single resort room built. The island that was famous for get wrecked got wrecked. By greed, by bureaucracy, by the gap between what developers promise and what they actually deliver. Number 2. Capricorn International Resort, the Iwasaki Resort, 9 kilometers north of Yeppoon, Capricorn Coast, Central Queensland. I need you to understand the scale of this place. Wealthy Japanese businessman Yohachiro Iwasaki purchased 9,000 hectares, that is 22,000 acres, of land north of Yeppoon in the 1970s. It was the first foreign-owned freehold land in Australia. Required a special act of parliament. On that land, he built a resort with hundreds of accommodation suites, numerous bars and restaurants, a Japanese garden, a world-class golf course, a chapel, function rooms, and the largest outdoor swimming pool in the Southern Hemisphere. In its heyday, private planes ferried groups of cashed-up Japanese businessmen to the region to drink, swim, and hit golf balls. The resort employed approximately 300 people, a significant employer for Yeppoon. It was the jewel of the Capricorn Coast. Then the tourism patterns shifted. The resort declined. Operator Mercure quit the already run-down property in August 2016. A proposed $600 million redevelopment was declared a state-significant project in December 2013, but the environmental impact process stalled. The Queensland Government's Coordinator-General website now lists the project as discontinued or on hold. The Iwasaki family has admitted the scale of works required is too large for a family business without a major investment partner. As of April 2026, you can play a round of golf at the Capricorn Resort, and then look across at the drained, crumbling ruins of what was once the biggest swimming pool in the Southern Hemisphere. The golf course works, the pool does not. That single contrast, functional fairway, ruined pool, tells you everything about what happened to Australian resort tourism. The things that are cheap to maintain survived. The things that required real investment did not. 9,000 hectares of land. The largest pool in the Southern Hemisphere. A special act of Parliament. And now the pool is empty, and the only activity on the property is 18 holes of golf. Number 1. Wonderland Sydney. Australia's Wonderland. Eastern Creek, Western Sydney. If you grew up in Sydney, or really anywhere in New South Wales, between 1985 and 2004, this one will hurt. Opened December 7th, 1985, by Premier Neville Wran, the largest amusement park in the Southern Hemisphere. 3 themed areas: Gold Rush, Medieval Fair, and Hanna-Barbera Land, featuring Yogi Bear, Scooby-Doo, and the Flintstones. The flagship ride was the Bush Beast, the largest wooden roller coaster in the Southern Hemisphere. 975 meters of track, 28 passengers per train. There was Space Probe, a free-fall ride that stopped your stomach somewhere around your throat. The Demon, a boomerang coaster that came from Expo 88. A water park called The Beach, an Australian wildlife park. For 19 years, if you drove west on the M4 motorway, the silhouettes of the Bush Beast, Demon, and Space Probe were landmarks. They were part of the Western Sydney skyline. A school excursion to Wonderland was as much a rite of passage for Sydney kids as going to the beach. In 1997, Malaysian company Sunway Group purchased the park. In 7 years of ownership, they added one ride: a second-hand cable car from the Sydney Showgrounds. The gates shut for the last time on April 26, 2004, the day after Anzac Day. The CEO blamed September 11th, the Bali bombings, the HIH collapse, SARS, bird flu, the Asian financial crisis, the Ansett collapse, the Iraq War, and the 2003 bushfires. The Sydney Morning Herald responded that Sunway Group blames Wonderland's demise on everything except poor management. What was never publicly disclosed at the time was this: Sunway had secured a rezoning of the land from recreational to bulk retail. The 58-hectare site was sold for $52.5 million. Complete demolition was undertaken in September 2005. The Bush Beast was demolished. The Beastie was demolished. The Snowy River Rampage was demolished. Some rides were sold overseas. The Demon ended up in Alabama, then India. The entry signage featuring Spider-Man and the Hulk was sold to a junkyard in Londonderry. 2 camels were adopted by a family in Goulburn. The military used the abandoned park for urban warfare training exercises before demolition. They called it Exercise Ferris Wheel. A Western Sydney resident named Chris Watts jumped the fence multiple times between closure and demolition. He described a strange air of serenity. After years of screams and shouts and noise of all the rides, the place was tranquil. He climbed to the top of the Beastie, the first roller coaster he ever rode as a child, one final time before it was torn down. Enthusiasts raised $6,000 to save the Bush Beast carriages. Today, one street in the industrial estate is named Wonderland Drive. At 2 Wonderland Drive, Vitex Pharmaceuticals occupies a 34,439 square meter manufacturing facility. The park's 40th anniversary in December 2025 passed with almost no acknowledgement. A former employee named Amar Khan has been trying to build a replacement called Sydney's Wonderland since 2009. As of 2026, it has not eventuated. The largest theme park in the Southern Hemisphere is now a pharmaceutical warehouse. Australia builds spectacular things in spectacular places and then lets them disappear. The largest pool sits empty. The largest theme park is a warehouse. The last resort ever built on a Queensland island spent more years abandoned than operating. Half of Queensland's coastal resorts are closed. These places were not just businesses. They were where we learned to swim, rode our first roller coaster, saw dolphins for the first time, took the family holiday photographs that still sit in albums nobody opens anymore. And now they are ruins, or housing estates, or a street name nobody notices. If you remember any of these places, if you have a story, a photograph, a faded t-shirt that says I got wrecked on Keppel Island, drop it in the comments. And if you made it this far, subscribe. I clearly have an unhealthy obsession with abandoned Australian things, and there is more coming.